Hey, what's up everybody, Isaac here with another New World video, and today's video is going to be on the new dungeon we have, the human dungeon, the Forge, and it was only a level 6, but this is my first week here with this being mutated, and it's been a fun one trying to figure out, but mutation level 6 is getting hard enough that, you know, if you got it down at 6, you're definitely going to be able to carry it through to 9 and 10, and so on and so forth. I think the highest one I've done and ran a gold on so far is a 9, but I only have it unlocked. The reason I ran a 6 is that's the highest I had unlocked, but I should have a 7 unlocked now. Oh yeah, I have a 7. Looks like I did one bronze one on 7, which obviously doesn't unlock anything, but that's just from one of my previous runs. We just did a 6 and got a gold solid run. So this dungeon is definitely tough if you have a team that's unorganized, but you know, it's also tough your first few rounds, just like any of these dungeons, until you get the mechanics figured out. But I just wanted to show you the build that I've actually been loving. A little bit of a different build using for tanking. I've been using the hatchet for the bosses mainly. Well, I use the hatchet and the sword for the first boss, and then I use the hatchet and the GreatSword for the second boss. There's a couple of reasons I really enjoyed that. The GreatSword, having this relentless rush, it comes in handy when you want to just dodge right through the boss, and sometimes he'll trap you between the ball and him, but once you have this relentless rush, you can actually just rush right through him, no worries. And you can actually put out some pretty heavy damage. And I was actually down to 184 con on accident. I would have intended to be at 200 con, but my gear change, once I must have con on my sword. Yeah, this is the sword I was using, so I'll go over the equipment real quick, but I've been testing out some different gear, trying some different builds, seeing what works better, what works worse, you know, as far as fire resistance and ice resistance, since it's an ice mutation. But I just picked up some gear with some fire resistance on it. Flame conditioning, actually. I think it's just these two pieces, yeah. I was gonna maybe get a couple more, but the other pieces were just so expensive that I decided it wasn't worth it right now. I can go and craft some myself, but the other pieces were cheap enough that, well, by the time you buy all of the stuff to craft it, you're just as well off to just buy it off the market if it's, you know, between 5 and 10 grand. But the other pieces were like 20, 30, 50k, so I just got 2 pieces, and I've been trying out ruby gems as well, and I have enough pieces that I could switch out. So I have boots, chest, and gloves. So I have 3 pieces of these. So if I really wanted to, I could go ahead and throw these 3 pieces on. And then at the boss, I could go ahead and switch over to these 2. But at level 6, being already 625, I just figured, well, we'll just run it like this and see how it feels. And it really felt actually quite good. Felt pretty strong. So I was unsure because, you know, if you look at these mutations, let's see if it'll let me click it. You know, if you look at here, it says frozen. Enemies deal 50% of all damage as ice damage. And I've heard people say that that doesn't apply to the bosses, but it doesn't tell us that anywhere that I can find. So that's pretty odd of them if the bosses don't convert damage to ice. But regardless, if you have fire damage, you're for sure gonna be good, and you should think ice ward would help you as well, but I just don't know. Some people claim that the bosses aren't affected by the mutation changes, so they say that you should put fire resistance on for the bosses. But I did try, like I said, and no matter what, fire conditioning is going to do you well in this dungeon, because some of the biggest things that hurt you the most is fire. So heck, if you can get a couple of pieces even with this flame conditioning for this dungeon, it's always going to come in handy. So Because there's all, it's not like you're worried about, oh, well, what if it's not a fire mutation? Well, it's not a fire mutation now, and it still helps me because the bosses do some heavy fire damage. But let's show you our build that we were using for this dungeon. So for the most of the dungeon, I was running GreatSword and regular sword, and it worked awesome. I have a damage build as my GreatSword as well. I don't even have the taunt on here. It just worked awesome. I love it. And part of the reason I don't have the taunt is because of animation lock. Animation lock just gets me killed well, not so much in the regular part of the dungeon, but like I used this for the last boss. And the animation lock is the main thing that got me killed all the time on the last boss. So having all skills that don't give me animation lock came in huge. So obviously when I have my hatchet on, Berserk, you're locked into it, but it's such a quick skill that chances are you're not going to get killed. And that throw, you're also locked into it, but I'm not using that throw unless he's far away from me, and it's such a quick skill. And that skill, I can't remember the name of these. Raging Torrent, you can dodge out of that one, so it's going to be hard to get killed from animation locks from either of those three skills on the hatchet. And then Relentless Rush, like you can't dodge out of that, but when you're using it for a reason, and you're getting out of dodge, and it basically replaces your dodge, and it's actually better than a dodge. And this other guy, we can dodge out of that if we... Why can't I remember any of these? Crosscut, jeez. And Skyward Slash. So that one, I don't think we can dodge out of, but at least we can cancel it. We don't have to go through the full skill. And once again, we're mainly just using that one when we know we're safe. We're probably going to Relentless Rush through, and then we're going to go into the Skyward Slash and apply some rend. So we're typically going to be in a really safe place anytime we're using that skill. But Crosscut, if we need to, we can dodge out of it. That's huge, because it is a big damage dealer. But one of the big problems is it takes so long, but that doesn't matter because you just let it ride, and if you keep being safe, you let it ride and you do some big damage, and well, you find yourself an enemy's coming at you. Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Well, you just dodge out of it and you're good to go. So one reason why this works pretty awesome is, well, you have a lot of freedom with this build. So I'm going to show you the tree here that I decided to use, and I did take guarded shift, block for 2 seconds, and you enter defiant stance. So anytime we need to and we're worried about damage, we just go ahead and we block for 2 seconds, and it's going to put us into defiant stance, which allows us to take a less percentage of damage, which is huge. So everything else about this build is built around doing damage. So we use these skills, even though I don't have any taunt on this thing, it's still awesome. I'm holding all kinds of aggro because I rush through, I do some damage, I'll put some really good damage, and with that taunt gem, along with doing lots of damage, you're going to hold threat. So even though I'm someone that's as in love as anybody about taunts, that's why I love my sword and hatchet build with my refreshing torrent, so I can have endless taunts. So even though I am that guy, I'm loving this build where I only have one taunt. Well, actually 2 taunts. Shield Bash is a taunt too. But the Shield Bash, you do kind of get stuck in it, and a lot of times you're using it when the boss or the enemies are right on top of you. It's not as big of a deal throughout the majority of the dungeon, but when you get to the bosses, if you get stuck in that animation lock at the wrong time, you can kind of be dead. Defender's Resolve, it also locks you in, and it takes forever to go off, so it's going to get you killed a lot. But when I'm at the boss, I don't really need that part. The second boss, or the first boss for that matter, because I do have the hatchet out, so I have my taunts if need be. But that second boss, you want to hold his aggro as much as you can, but he's still going to go chasing after everyone and running all over the place, so everybody just needs to be able to dodge. So that's why I'm loving this build on the second boss, is it gives you a ton of freedom, tons of movement. You know, you got your berserks, you can start moving faster, you start healing, super mobile, you can dodge out of, you know, if you go into that and you're not animate locked in, and that's such a slow animation, such a short quick animation that you're not going to get killed using that. And so we can just hatch it away, and then we can dodge out of the way. So more about being mobile with that last boss for me, and you'll see that if you watch the walkthrough. Rather, I should say when you watch the walkthrough, of course. But, and then of course the GreatSword, the Relentless Rush, tons of freedom of movement. Crosscut, well, we can dodge out of it, we're good to go. And that one we can't really dodge out of. I don't know if we can early cancel out. I'm not sure if that's an early cancel, but it's such a quick skill, and when we're using it, it's not going to be a problem anyways. So that's why I'm loving this build for the boss. Probably would work for the first boss too, but for the second boss is the one I've been using it for. But oh yeah, I was showing you this this tree. You can just look at it. I'm not going to go over everything super in depth. What I'm taking on this side, if you are hit at full health, reduce the damage taken by 20%, then gain 20% fortify. It has a 20-second cooldown, so that's pretty nice, but we do have to take one of these in order to get further down the tree. Hitting the final attack, the GreatSword Chain reduces the duration of debuffs on you by 10%. Like, sure, that's cool, but I'm not that interested in it. After gaining Defiant Stance, you also gain Fortify, so that's actually pretty nice. You know, maybe I'm not going to take this if I'm going straight damage DPS, but we are a tank, so we're taking a couple of skills that are going to help us have a little survivability, and we have the ability to enter that Defiant Stance whenever we want to. So enter Defiant Stance with a block, we're going to take less damage already, and then after gaining Defiant Stance, you will also gain Fortify. So 25% for your next hit taken within 5 seconds. So that's pretty impressive. You know, say you're on the big boss and all of a sudden you enter guard, you see he's coming after you, so you enter guarded shift, and whatever next hit he hits you with is going to do very minimal amounts of damage. Yeah, if it's one of his big hits, it's still going to give you some pretty good damage, but a big world of difference. So even though we're totally damaged, we still have a lot of survivability with this build, between the movement and then the ability to just enter Defiant Stance when we want to. We're good to go. So base damage is increased by 3% for each GreatSword buff on you, which is nice. Obviously more damage, because part of this whole thing is we're just helping our teammates output damage, and we're also holding aggro by outputting damage. So charge heavy attacks have grit and inflict bleeding, so that's pretty nice, giving us grit and extra bleeds, extra damage. So having a lot of fun with this one. So sword and shield build, we're going leadership. I like leaping strike. You know, we're taking this for the taunt. It'd be nice to have some more stuff here, but when we want leadership, it's just too tough to do it. All incoming healing and regeneration is increased by 10%. You know, you could do without that one, but it is helpful. Obviously your pots, anything from the healer, it's going to help you. If your health is above damage, you know, you could definitely argue that maybe you should take this one instead of this. Maybe I'll do that, but because oftentimes you're gonna be above 50% when you go to set off your defender's resolve, but it's so slow, it takes forever to go off. A lot of times you'll start getting hit pretty fast, and your health dies, goes down pretty fast. And when defender's resolve ends, heal 15% of your max health. I do like this perk. I love this perk, in fact. But it's just so many that are too hard to skip out on. Just the way she goes. You know, shield bash, it is nice in this dungeon because those men-at-arms, they're going to shield bash you, but if you shield bash them first, well, you do. That's a nice stun you have. It's not like a big AoE stun like a hammer or anything like that, but really the only thing you need to worry about in here is those men-at-arms. Stun those with your shield bash and you're good to go. So 15% physical armor, 10% reduction of any magical type. Stamina damage is reduced by 15% when blocking melee attack with a shield. Obviously, that's pretty huge. When you block an attack, you gain 20% fortify. Obviously, that's pretty huge. Leap and strike, and we're just taking all this offensive stuff to do damage, but also mainly for this leadership to help everyone in our group do an increased of 10% damage. Last thing to show you, I guess, is the hatchet build. Pretty standard hatchet build. Obviously, people do many different things. Sometimes they'll come rending throw all the way down to here. Sometimes they might take infected throw all the way down to the bottom. But for me, this is what I'm rocking for now. For some different builds, I might start rocking some different things, but as a tank, the main thing I'm working with is the Raging Torrent and Refreshing Torrent to give me endless taunts with my Berserk. So, pretty much all of my hatchets, I go with that Raging Torrent, or Refreshing Torrent on it. Each attack with the Raging Torrent reduces all hatchet cooldowns by 8.5%, so that's just huge. You can hit so many mobs when they're in a group and you just immediately get your taunt back up. So I'm going to have to play around with the throwing side of things a little bit in the near future here. But a lot of DPS are doing that, and I'm hearing that you can output more damage with the throwing side of things. But too busy making a video, so yeah, I'm just not going to take that. Don't have time. Server's about to go down in a few minutes here. So yeah, that covers most of that. We'll show you a little bit more about our build here, but this is the earring I'm wearing. Nimble, Refreshing Toast, Refreshing Evasion. Like, there's so many different things that I could use here. Nimble is awesome to have. Refreshing Toast is like the must-have. So these two are really good, but Refreshing Toast is the one must-have. Play around with what you like to use here. There's several different ones that I am perfectly fine with. Some people might say that you absolutely have to take a certain 3, but get Refreshing Toast and grab whatever other 2 that you like to see. And of course, we do have our Ice Ward gem in, but I only have a few of those. I only have 3 of them in for this whole run. And then we have the Simon Hack Silver Ring. You know, I think this is an awesome ring. Great ring for a tank. So definitely, if you don't have this one, go and try and get that one. That is from the Starstone Dungeon. And the Starstone Dungeon, it is mutated this week. So, you know, if you don't have it, maybe you should go and run it a few times, the Starstone Borrows, and see if you can get that ring to drop. You also should be able to craft it, I think, if you get enough materia, but sometimes that materia is kind of a pain to farm. And then we're using this Flame Protection Amulet mainly for the bosses, so giving us a big chunk of flame resistance, so 10% less fire damage, and we're also leaving the gem. So this gem stays in here permanently because, you know, we're doubling it up. This is my Flame Protection Amulet when I am able to use Strength. So if my build calls for Strength, is able to use Strength, this is my Flame Protection Amulet. And I am using a Frozen Shield Ward on my shield, which is handy. Nice big chunk of frozen shield or frozen absorption, so I got these 3 gems plus the shield, and that's a pretty strong amount of frozen protection. And obviously I got ward in all of my gear. So let's show you my pieces. You can get a 5-piece of this, and it's definitely a very strong build. So human ward, refreshing, and vigor. Vigor actually comes in pretty handy. Usually I don't like vigor much, but it's pretty good in this dungeon since there's a lot of burn going on, and if you can make that burn last a little bit shorter, it's gonna be helpful for sure. So very, very viable to go 5-piece with this set. So one, I haven't been playing long enough to get get enough materia to craft these by any means, but these are 2 drops I happen to get. So if I had all these drops, I don't know, maybe I'd run them, maybe I wouldn't, but I actually just leveled those ones up. I already had these 3 pieces, but I decided to buy a couple more, and then I leveled these up because I already had them. So the other the other pieces I've been getting, they're just drops that are very... Well, actually, no, this one's one I bought, but like this piece right here, these are very common drops. Once you start running the dungeon, you're going to get tons of these drops. Human ward, refreshing ward, and then dex and con mix here on this one. So refreshing ward as a tank is an awesome perk. So refreshing is good too, but honestly I'd be perfectly happy with a 5-piece human ward, refreshing ward. But I did want to try out this flame conditioning on, you know, these 2 pieces that were relatively cheap to buy. I think they were between 5k and 10k. So if you wanted to specifically make these pieces, you'd have to buy what, you know, you have to make sure you have the flame conditioning, and you'd have to make sure you have human ward perks, and you'd also have to buy, I don't know, is it 3 scarabs or something? By the time you end up crafting it, and the time you spend getting all set up, putting all your gear on, it's kind of a pain. So not a bad deal if you can find these pieces for 5 to 10k. They're basically buying them for what it would cost you to make them. And then once again, we got another one of these Fire Lord pieces. And then our pants, refreshing ward, human ward, dex con, and our boots, human ward, flame conditioning, constitution. And I considered putting these pieces on while I'm in the regular dungeon and just throwing these pieces on for the bosses, but I said, heck with it. We'll just run it, see how it feels, and it went splendid. So, already rambled on way too much, way too long, but it's kind of, you know, you might save yourself some time instead of just by watching somebody that has, you know, experienced 10-15 runs testing out different things, spending a bunch of gold. You know, sure, watching this kind of rambling on and so on and so forth, but could save you a lot of time versus, well, looks like the server just went down, so that's kind of annoying, but could save you a lot of time versus just, you know, doing all of this testing for yourself. So let's go ahead and jump into the run. So like a knucklehead, I forgot to hit record right at the start of the run, but we're not too far into it. Just some typical stuff. Relentless rush through a mob or two until you get around a corner, drag them all around the corner, and call it good. And now we're here. So kind of same thing. We grab the attention of those mobs, and then relentless rush through these guys, and put some damage down, just go to town. Using our GreatSword for the most part, then we switch over to our sword and shield. So, when we're using our GreatSword, we're putting out some pretty good and heavy damage. We switch over to Sword and Shield, we help our teammates do extra damage with our leadership perk. But I don't think it quite makes up for how much damage we can potentially output with the GreatSword. You know, for example, our teammates aren't even here yet putting out damage, so I'm working on it. Then I'll switch over to my Sword and Shield. My teammates get here, they can start putting out some damage. But then I go ahead and not afraid to switch right back to my GreatSword and help finish these guys off. So this next part here, one of the first little mini bosses, the big old hammer guy, he doesn't do much damage, but he's annoying with his stuns, so we like to pull him back into this little hallway just so we can deal with him all by himself. Or the other thing you can do, you can call all the mobs into here at once. I don't mind doing that either. You know, as long as your team's ready for it, it works alright. So, we're going to grab a few of the mobs, and I just go ahead and get his attention. Getting worried here that our teammates are going to go in and not come back. Sometimes they'll do that. They don't like to listen sometimes, but it's just a real big pain to go out and fight all of this stuff in the wide open. Fighting everything one at a time just isn't the play. So, you know, if you want, drag the hammer guy in by himself so you can fight him alone without any of the other mobs. Or if you want, grab all the mobs and the hammer guy at the same time and drag him in here. But yeah, it got unnecessarily messy because instead of just hanging back here and waiting for me, some of the guys came and, you know, you're better off as DPS just holding in the back. But yeah, the server's going to go down in an hour, and one of the guys seemed to be worried that we weren't going to finish in time. But if this takes us like an hour 15 to do this dungeon, we didn't deserve to finish this dungeon. So definitely should be able to finish it within 45 minutes or quite a bit less even. But you know, if it is your first couple of rounds, it might take you an hour with some failed attempts here and there, maybe even longer. Unfortunately, if you end up in a tough group that's kind of throwing, well. So here, just gonna grab the attention of this one last mob in this room, and we're gonna move right along. So, kind of gonna gather everything up, do a little bit of damage here, try and get the aggro, waiting for our team to come up, but I don't really want to fight these guys solo. It's just too few and they're too spread out, so my plan is grab all of their attention, get the aggro, and try and get our teammates to keep moving along. It's just not really worth to fight 3 mobs spread out in a big mess. You're better off to gather up a bunch of mobs together and take them out. It's just a whole heck of a lot faster. So I love the Relentless Rush. Use it to gather up mobs and keep moving along. Gives you some good speed. Switch to your Sword and Shield when you need to get that big old AoE taunt in. But you know, even though I don't have my Relentless Resolve ready to go, you know, it's still not much of a problem getting all of the attention of all these mobs here. So get them all on us. Get them in this nice tight group here, and you know, let our teammates do their job for the most part, but then we switch over to our GreatSword and we just start hacking away. So it's not a big deal if we have our Sword and Shield out. That means our teammate's going to do a little bit of extra damage, but when we have our GreatSword out, we're going to do some pretty heavy damage. It is a very strong GreatSword. You can get this one from this dungeon. Don't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it drops quite a lot. So it's going to allow you to do extra damage on your heavy attacks, and pretty much when you're a GreatSword, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to do all kinds of heavy attacks non-stop. So this next part is a pretty important part of the dungeon. You know, that dealing with that hammer guy, that's kind of one of the first big parts. And then this part, I like to grab the attention of this boss and bring him out in the open. You can go into that hallway and kill him, but if you got a team that's not totally on top of it, it can cause you some troubles. So we actually get really lucky here. You know, I was trying to get our teammates to come over here. The problem is, when they don't, sometimes they'll stay in the hallway, and this guy, he'll just one-tap them, and it just causes lots of problems. But typically, it seems like it's impossible to get this boss to come out alone without the mages. I don't know how we managed to do it, but I don't know, maybe one of our teammates knew a special secret, or maybe we just got completely lucky. I think it's just completely lucky, but typically the mages are going to come out with this boss, and what I would say is you hold the aggro of this boss while your teammates take out the mages. If your teammates are fighting this boss, and when he does that big lightning attack, it does a lot of damage to your teammates. And if they're taking damage from the mages at the same time, a lot of times they're going to go down. So if those mages pull out like they're typically gonna, try to get the attention of the boss, hold his aggro, and get your teammates to kill these other mobs. You know, these guys are pretty squishy, they die pretty quick. So if your DPS, go and take care of these real quick, you know, while you're holding the aggro of the boss, which typically these are going to pull out with the boss, but they can mow them down, and then they can come take the boss with you. So here, just kind of doing a relentless rush through, getting the attention. Then we're going to move on to the next group. You know, just kind of trying to do a little bit of damage to everything. Trying to get attention. And we got a nice group here. Got a little bit low, a little bit sketchy, but you know, we managed it. Could have got a little bit hairy if I did end up going down there. Then obviously all those mobs, they'll take out a DPS pretty quick, and pretty soon you get a team wipe. So got a little bit sketchy there, but not a problem. Healer caught me in time, gave me a nice heal, and we're good to go. So at this point, I got into the dungeon a little bit late, and I didn't get my coatings applied, so that's what I'm going to do here. We'll let these guys go take care of this little puzzle. That's pretty basic. But I do have Bane on my greatsword, but no Bane on my longsword. So the greatsword is the one that I also didn't have my audio switched over to my headphones, which is super annoying. But sounds like it actually gives you better sound as well. So better sound from the game, but also in game I could hear a lot better, concentrate a lot better. Switching my headphones, but wasn't coded up, didn't have my proper sound settings figured out before I got started, but that's life. So this is one reason why it's so much nicer if the tank can go first. Somebody else went through first and they got this guy's attention and I couldn't get his aggro. And then he got slow on you. Not the end of the world, but just one of those things where, it can cause problems. Somebody else gets aggro, you get hit with slow, you can't get his aggro back. If he starts taking people out with his little explosion and everything, well, you can get yourself into a little bit of a situation, but we had a strong team, worked out just fine. So there's a lot of things that can go south really fast in this dungeon if you have DPS that think they want to run the show and they go and do pulls that get people killed, or they run ahead and they get knocked out before you ever get there, and pretty soon you got a whole team that's dead and a whole team that's complaining and whining. But otherwise, everyone moves together and make sure that the tank is with you or in front of you at all times. As a tank, you should be the one knowing. And so we do end up getting a couple of people killed here, whereas if they did let me go first, I could have been the one that he was targeting, so he would have fired off those fireballs and they would have already been done and gone before the rest of the team got here, and then they could have figured out how to navigate it through from behind me. Once those fireballs exploded, you can get through just fine. So that is one reason. You can just stay down at the entrance and heal from down low. One thing that does work pretty good, healer can just stay right down at the bottom and he can heal you on this platform. He doesn't even have to make that whole walk around where I'm pinging there for him. He can just stay down and heal from there, and then once you kill these two guys, this lava disappears. I was mainly just asking him to stay over there just so we can speed things along and move on past this part. Just would have been a little bit faster, but really not the end of the world. We still made really good time on this, even though we lost a few moments of time. And then this other guy, he did have range, so he stayed over there, which is nice. Saved us a little bit of extra time versus waiting for him to get over here. But once you got roughly 4 people ready to go, especially you got the healers, one of them, we're ready to go, jump in. But a little bit annoying to start this fight if you don't have the healer ready. Definitely can cause some wipes if that happens, and I make a big boo-boo here. Oh, I'm an idiot. I didn't know that there was lava right there left. 1, I tried jumping the corner, but 2, I didn't think there was any lava left that could kill me, so I wasn't paying too much attention. But yeah, jumped right into lava to my death. Stupid mistake on my part, but you live and you learn. This way she goes. But at least I don't have to make the walk all the way around once you kill, that little mini boss. The lava disappears, for the most of the lava disappears, so I thought the lava disappeared. But there's still enough to kill you if you try and find it. But you can just walk through on the short side of things. There's a little way that you can jump and dodge if you got some movement skills. Take a shortcut, but it's not really worth it. You get people that miss the jump and die, and pretty soon you're failing the run just because people are trying to save an extra minute or 40 seconds. But if you have a good enough team, you don't need to save that 30 seconds. Half the time you end up just losing minutes and deaths and end up failing the run because of silly stuff like that. So, switch over to my hatchet and my sword here. Probably would be alright to stick with my GreatSword and my regular sword, but it is nice to have the hatchet with the movement, the ability to throw hatchets if I need to from a little bit of a distance away. You got that self-heal, just a little bit of extra survivability. You know, and obviously sword and shield is always a solid choice. So, hard to go wrong with sword and shield and hatchet for pretty much any boss in any dungeon. The thing that's awesome about the hatchet is so many of the bosses you can beat them with a hatchet just by your movement, by your survivability. You sit there and hack away, and when the boss goes to hit you, you dodge away. But we're mowing this guy down pretty fast. We got him down to the first phase of his little spinny doodle thing. Really darn quick. I think then he just did maybe one of the 4 ways, and then we had him finished off. So right now I'm just sitting on my hatchet and DPSing away. Could be a toss-up, you know. Are we gonna do more team damage if I have my sword and shield out? Or are we going to do more team damage if I have my hatchet out? You know, if I have my sword and shield out, I can't be... You know, I won't be able to do as much damage myself. Just, not as safely. Much safer to be doing damage with my hatchet. You know, when I got that berserk self-heal going. You know, and just the mobility of it. The ability to dodge. Such a smooth operating weapon. And see, we're already down to this little 4-way spinny thing, and he's super low, so we mowed this boss down quite nicely, quite fast. But most of us were 625, and it is only level 6. But nonetheless, even at level 6, you know, if you're not built proper, you're still not going to mow him down very fast. Really is important to have high DPS in these dungeons. Highly suggest as a DPS you're running light armor, you're trying to get down to 100 con or less. You know, sure, it's gonna make you a little bit more squishy, but when stuff takes too long to get mowed down, people start getting mowed down themselves instead of the mobs. But yeah, that one went really smooth. So like I said, even though we are 625 gear score and it is a level 6, there's a lot of people that are going down on this no matter what gear score they are and no matter what mutation level it is. So we just do a nice quick little relentless rush through. We go and do some more damage with the cross cut. So we're trying to get the attention of most everything by doing damage. I think this man-at-arms guy, he got away from me and took out one of our teammates, but I do finally get my taunt off and we get everything recovered. So, you know, not 100% perfect, 0 mistakes by any means, but since I only have the one big AoE taunt, I'm trying to be a little bit conservative with it, trying to get the first initial attention of everything with throwing a little bit of damage, and then we call everything to us with our big old taunt. So sometimes you can get these 2 guys to come over to the corner without getting a boss, but it's usually pretty hard. But nonetheless, make sure that you get the attention of the man-at-arms dude. Make sure you have his aggro, You know, if you can, give him a good stun with your shield bash if you have that, or any type of stun you have. But make sure you get him taunted. Make sure, if you have the option to, give him a stun. When he's stunned, he can't do damage to anyone. But, you know, we get him taken care of while one of our teammates was sitting on this mage. And we get rid of the mobs first, and then we come and kill this mage. And we are good to move right along. So this next part, you can skip these mobs, but I like to just kill them. So many teams end up just getting killed by trying to skip these mobs. They get knocked into the crusher, they get knocked off the edge somehow, somebody dies while you're just trying to skip, and it's easy enough to just mow them right on down. It really doesn't take you that long. So there's a lot of teams that they try to do something fancy, something cute on here, and they end up just wiping over and over and over again. So it's a fairly easy dungeon if you are willing to just take it easy and smooth. But if you try to get too cute, sometimes it just causes you lots of problems. Started getting in a little bit of trouble here. If I was smart, I would have used my grasping vines there a little bit sooner, but it's kind of in and out of the silence, obviously. But I intentionally backed out of the silence, but still didn't remember to use it. So keeping our block up just to be safe, making sure we don't die, and once we get a little bit of health back, well, we can finally go to town and help finish him off. Got a little bit sketchy right there, but such is life. This little mob, if you want, you can kill him. He's pretty squishy, he'll die fast, but what I've been doing lately is, you know, I'll just relentless rush right through him and carry him right up top. Jump on this man-at-arms guy, give him a good shield bash, that way he's taunted for 1, 2, he is stunned, so he can't hurt anyone when he's stunned. But after that, you gotta try and regain his aggro, do some damage to him if you can. Make sure he doesn't go chasing down somebody else. See that big rush he does? It causes some problems, so you definitely want to try and keep his attention. These man-at-arms, they're one of the main issues to the majority of this dungeon. You got 1 or 2 mini bosses that are a big pain. The big sword lightning guy, he is a pain in the rear, but you know, if you play it smart, it's not so bad. And the other one that's a big pain in the rear is one that's coming up pretty quick here, the blunderbuss dude. He hits like a freaking tank. Your DPS and healer, he'll one-shot him. Even you, he'll come close to one-shotting. It's kind of ridiculous, but you know, the trick is keep your shield up anytime that he's gonna shoot at you. Try to keep him taunted, but try to tank him from a little bit of a distance away. Go ahead, run up to him and shield bash him, and then kind of drift back a little bit again. That way, he's not doing full maximum damage to you. But not quite there yet, but close. So once again, we go ahead and shield bash, taunt the man-at-arms. That's, you know, kind of most important thing of this group. So typically what I do is just I kind of hang out on these guys. I get them low, get them taunted, and then move on to the next group. We don't want to get too carried away when you have a bunch of these men-at-arms in the mix, because they cause some problems. You start dealing with a couple of them at a time, and you can get your team in trouble real quick. But once we got them very low, I move on to the next one. And once again, I shield bash the man-at-arms guy. The rest of these guys, they're not going to cause you many problems, but the man-at-arms guy, he definitely will. So keep him under control, hit him with that shield bash, which acts as a stun, but also is your taunt as well. So he's going to focus you until that taunt wears off. But then what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and do extra damage to him to make sure that you maintain that aggro. And if you do have your defender's resolve back up and ready and you need to use that, go ahead. But just trying to let teammates know what the plan is before we go in. Anytime you can, have good communication, it's going to make you a lot more successful in these dungeons. So there's different things that can work, but if you have 5 different people trying 5 different strategies, chances are you're gonna fail. So that's why I kind of let them know, hey, try to take out the mobs. Let me try to hold full aggro on the boss. We're in a situation right now where I don't have a taunt, and I do have his aggro, but as soon as I drop my shield, he's gonna do some heavy damage. But we get him to this point and we're all ready to go to town on him, and I'm just ready to do as much damage as I can to help them out, and let's just finally finish him off. But that is one of the big pains of this dungeon, is that boss. A lot of people like to kind of skip him, but I think you do have to interact with him before you can do this puzzle thing. So I'm not sure if it really works to skip him or not any longer. But just to be, kind of play it safe, just deal with him head on and, deal with him smartly. If you try to skip him, not sure if it works anymore, but some teammates, they would try skipping him and then he somehow gets called, and then, well, I don't know, it's just as easy to take him out and do it smartly. For some reason I thought I missed a drop, so I was trying to see if I had a bag left over there, but couldn't find it. These guys, once again, you can skip these guys and walk right into the boss, but they're squishy enough, just take them out. And I think we are actually waiting for one of our teammates to catch back up with us. So, one way to kill time while we're waiting on him, for 1, and for 2, just making sure that he is not going to get killed as he tries to skip it behind us. So right here, you can see I am at 200 con, 200 strength, and I did have the gem dust, but I decided, you know what, I'm going to take these flame pots and a little bit stronger resistance, but I didn't end up using any of them anyways. But you can see my stats changed. I wasn't paying attention to see exactly what they changed to, but it dropped below 200, which makes me have less survivability, which was unintentional. Intentionally, I would like to stay at 200, but that would have meant I would have had to do an attribute change, which wouldn't be a big deal, but either I wouldn't have been able to switch my gear, or I would have had to do an attribute change, and I just didn't realize that it was going to leave me behind 200, so down below 200, so I didn't bother changing it, because I didn't realize that I went down below 200. Definitely as a tank, it's a good idea to be at 200 anyways, because it gives you a lot more survivability at that 200 perk. So one thing I am going to do throughout this fight is I'm going to hang out at this entrance wall as much as I can. The reason being is the balls that he ends up shooting at you, they end up breaking before they get to the wall. So if you hang out close to the wall, the balls aren't going to wreck you. Sometimes you're still trying to dodge the boss, or the boss will push you into them or whatever. So once in a while, they'll still give you a little bit of damage, but it's about the safest place in here when everything turns into this big major AoE fest. The big lava pools. Obviously, you don't want to sit on the floor in the lava pools. You want to step up on one of these platforms, but then when you come back off this platform, you're kind of going to go right back in the middle here, next to the wall, give you the ability to dodge either way, stay out of range of the balls. So when you're out here, the ball can hit you, but once you get right next to the wall, the balls end up breaking before they get to you. So So one nice thing about my hatchet is I just hang out on this wall, but I can still keep chucking hatchets at the boss when he goes the other way. And being that I have the carnelian taunt gem inside of my hatchet, even though he's too far away for me to taunt him, I am able to still draw aggro, because when you do damage with a taunt gem in your weapon, that's going to help you hold some aggro as well. So we definitely want to steer clear as we can of our teammate there that's down. We don't want a teammate to go and revive him and then drag him, you know, drag the boss right. You can see he caught me with that big ol' hit that hurts like a bugger. You know, but I do have some pretty good flame resistance and so on and so forth if he hit me with that without having all that good resistance. And being that I'm not even at 200 con, yeah, it hurts a lot. But you can see we're actually mowing this guy down pretty quick. And for the most part, I'm acting as one of the DPS. You know, not obviously quite as major of a DPS as the DPS are. But we are continuing right along to do some pretty good damage. Obviously, we have the heavy armor on, so we're not doing anything crazy amounts of damage. But we are able to do some pretty strong damage for a tank. Low-ish con. And when we do have the GreatSword out, we are outputting good damage. We got the Human Bane. We got the Trenchant Strikes, I think it's called. Whatever it is that makes you do extra damage when you do heavy attacks. But get myself in a little bit of trouble a couple of times, get some really low health. But what I'm doing with this boss is I'm not even, you know, obviously we do have block on our greatsword and it is very damage mitigating, but we're avoiding blocking. We're mostly just trying to do damage and dodge, because the majority of his stuff you just want to dodge it. There's a couple of attacks he does that you can block, but like that one, you don't really want to block it, you just want to dodge it. It hits too hard. It's going to drain all your stamina. So one of the things that causes the biggest problems here is when the lava gets filled up and you get trapped, and you can see where that ball drops down. And we're pretty much done here. But yeah, you can see where that ball drops down, the lava gets filled up, and especially if the boss comes at you and traps you, that's where that relentless rush comes in awesome. So you're better off running through the lava than you are letting the boss come and pummel you with one of his big major attacks, or letting that ball just pummel you as well. That is the definition of how you get taken out on this boss. Get stuck between the boss and that one of those balls dropping, and you get CC'd by the boss, you get CC'd by the ball, and you're dead. So that relentless rush, it comes in super awesome on this boss. So there you have it. That is why I am loving this specific build for this specific dungeon and against these specific bosses. So hope you liked it. This dungeon is pretty interesting. Had some runs that have caused us some problems. A lot of teammates that like to run around like chickens with their heads cut off instead of, you know, working with some organization. But like every dungeon, your first few times through it, expect to get some fails, expect to struggle, expect to die a few times, expect to have some runs that take way too freaking long. But that's just kind of the way it works if you get a new dungeon that you have never done. You know, like I think I mentioned earlier, this is my first week doing this mutation. Really doing this dungeon. I've been away for a while, and this is a new dungeon. And I think this is only the second time it's been mutated, maybe. But definitely a little bit challenging, but it's a lot of fun. Lots of chaos with the bosses. But they do telegraph their moves pretty good, so once you get a little bit of practice, you'll be able to figure out the cues, and it just won't be all that bad. So the biggest problem is all the chaos and this times you just don't have time to move around at all, but you'll figure that stuff out too, and that's why I'm loving this build. We got that Relentless Rush on the Greatsword, so even though it's not a build you typically see a damage Greatsword for tanking, but it's worked awesome for me. Give it a try. Let me know how you liked it. We'll catch you on the next one.